I want to move to something, a little game I like to play. It's called Choose Between Two. So, Jake, I'm going to throw two options to you, based on the same theme, and I want you to tell me what is going to be your choice, and just to talk about a little bit as to why that would be. The first one, I think I know what the answer is, but I'm curious anyway. Um, so this is a movie one: Sidekicks or Karate Kid?
Oh man, that's so hard. I'm gonna go with Sidekicks because it has Chuck Norris. But man, that's a hard one because they're both really good coming of age martial arts films. But Chuck Norris's presence leans me more toward Sidekicks.
I love Sidekicks when I was a kid. I remember seeing that you talked about how that's kind of like a film that you liked that other critics didn't like. And I remember watching that when I was a kid, loving it because I was a huge Chuck Norris fan when I was a kid. You know, Lone Wolf McQuade and movies like that. And Jonathan Brandis was a big star back then as well. And I was thinking about, movies I can show my kids because I don't want to show them stuff that's too violent yet. And I've shown them Karate Kid and I've shown them a couple other things. So I was like, oh, Sidekicks will be a good one. Interestingly, didn't wasn't Chuck Norris first asked to play the role of Kreese in the Karate Kid movies, and he's like he didn't want to play a villain. Is that
I don't
something that
I don't
happened?
know if he was asked. I think he was on the short list because he had
Right.
played villains. He had played villains before in obviously
Way of the
The Way of
Dragon.
the Dragon, and then
Yeah.
in another one called Slaughter in San Francisco, I think.
Right.
But he didn't like playing villains, and I have actually heard Stallone talk about this. They didn't all those '80s action stars. They don't like playing villains, so
No.
that does not surprise me. But I don't know if he was approached or if he was just on the short list or something like that. I want to say I could be incorrect about that, but I think he was just they just said, hey, he would be a good person for this one.
Okay, next one. So the question is the better detective. And not to do it's just about the character as a whole. Okay, you can put all the movies, the writing, the novels, everything all together. Better detective, Batman or Sherlock Holmes?
Oh, see. You know, I'm gonna have to say Sherlock Holmes. And as Batman is called the world's greatest detective, that's in his time. But I think Sherlock Holmes is a slightly better detective. He seems to be able to solve mysteries without his fist. If you read the books, and that's not a slight. Batman's my all-time favorite comic book character, but just looking at it objectively, I'd have to go with Sherlock Holmes. His method of deduction seems to work more in his favor than Batman's gadgets and his own detective skills.
It was the Sherlock Holmes books that really kind of like opened up your eyes in regards to the potential of writing as a career, wasn't it? I mean, those were the books that really
Oh
kind of like
yeah,
spoke to you, yeah.
oh yeah. The first novel that I got ever, like the first real novel, was my parents got me a kids version of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And that really inspired me. That actually, because I had already loved reading, even as a kid. I had a Knights of the Round Table book. I had Black Beauty. My parents had a really nice little, and again, these are kids edition at the time because I was really little. But that's what actually inspired me to write was The Hound of the Baskervilles. After I read that, I said I want to write characters like this. And right after we moved, because they gave it to me because we were moving from Beaumont, Texas to Dallas, which is where I grew up, and I read it the whole car ride, and as soon as we got established, I was like, I want the full version of The Hound of the Baskervilles. My parents kind of debated it because I was in third grade, but they're like, hey, you know what? It's Victorian.
Hmm.
It's not going to be that bad. You know, it's not like they're you know it's going to have be a little bit more smooth. So we went to our local library and they got me a unabridged version of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and I never looked back. But yeah, that was the book that definitely inspired me to write. And I still have that little kids version. I've kept it all these years, just to as a reminder of this is what kicked off your love of writing.
Speaking of love of writing, do you prefer fiction or non-fiction writing?
I prefer fiction. I always kind of force myself to read nonfiction because I think it's important to be well read. But I prefer fiction. I mainly read these days. I mainly read thrillers and sci-fi and some fantasy.
Next one. Physical media or streaming? Where would you like to watch your TV and movies? Physical
I
media or
prefer
streaming?
physical, but these days it's a little bit harder. I unfortunately after college I had to get rid of a lot of my DVDs. I sold a lot of them to pay off college bills and pay off debts and stuff. Bought a car with some of the stuff I sold, but I've been since I've established myself in Phoenix specifically. I opened up my video cabinet. I was like, I used to have, when I was at college, I had a DVD collection 3 times the size. So I'm
Mm.
working to slowly restore it and build it back up because I do prefer that physical media over the streaming. I can't explain it because it's honestly not, as far as watching the movie, it's not that different, but just the nostalgia of, I'm going to select this movie, I'm going to put it in, because you do a little bit more work with it, a little bit. And I like that experience more.
I think something that draws me to physical media more than streaming as well is that I actually own it, where with streaming, rights can be taken away and go onto another place, and then you have to get another streaming. And there's so many different streaming platforms now, it's so expensive
Mhm.
at the end. I said to my kids, go, look, we're just having two, and that's it. Because we can't afford all this stuff anymore. And the other thing that's been really bothering me over the last year or so is that so many movies are being censored.
Mhm.
Disney blurring images or using visual effects to hide things, and Fox, or which I guess is Disney as well, but they're taking language out of like the French connection that might be considered, triggering or whatever the hell what verbiage I want to go with. And I'm like, well, I'm happy I got that original double disc that I bought back like in 2000 or something, and it still looks
Mhm.
good, and I can hear it all. And I think that's something that's really concerning to me. And also, I think physical media is going to come back in a big way. I could see
Oh,
it
I
as the new
totally agree
vinyl.
with you. I totally
Yeah.
agree with you, especially as these streaming service, like you said, get more expensive. I definitely agree with that.
Last one. Okay, so you're at the cinema. You're about to watch the film. What's your favorite go-to cinema food? Popcorn or candy?
Oh, actually, hot dogs.
Ah,
uh,
interesting.
yeah, I love buying theater hot dogs. I don't know why. That's actually something that started when I moved to California for all those years. I there was a there's a really big ArcLight theater. I think it's actually, sadly, I think it closed down because of the pandemic in Sherman Oaks. And
Mm.
I really loved their hot dogs. And I just kind of got in the habit of buying hot dogs. And that's now my go-to snack every time I go to the theaters. I just get a hot dog and a Coke.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.